2021 started off with Revolution of the Daleks, and right after the transmission of that episode, there was a teensy little minisode setting up Dan, the new Liverpool companion played by John Bishop. And then, 2 days after that, the Mirror reported that Jodie Whittaker would be leaving us after the incoming set of episodes. And later in January, Russell T Davies popped up to say he thinks Doctor Who could and should and eventually will have a Marvel-like universe of varied content and spin-offs. Both these ideas really hung over the whole year, didn't they?
Yeah, I suppose.
When you line them all up like that, it really suggests causation that I'm not totally clear on.
Indeed. Now, moving back a bit, in 2020's November, Chibnall confirmed Series 13 would be 8 episodes rather than the usual 11, due to COVID production logistics. And when he says 11, he's of course referring to the festive specials that are produced alongside Chibnall's first 2 10-episode series. July 2021 saw Chibnall confirm Series 13 would be just 6 episodes in a kind of serialised format, while Stephen Moffat leaked The Weeping Angels would appear, and in September it was announced that Russell T Davies was coming back to showrun Doctor Who again after Chibnall leaving in a newly ordered third 2022 special. So there's a lot of foreknowledge about Doctor Who's future mingling around, but for now, Halloween 2021 gave us this first Flux episode, The Halloween Apocalypse, which is about to be discussed by myself, Neo from Australia, along with Ingiga from England and Miriz from the USA. There's a lot of stuff I want to talk with you guys about here. The episode structure, the it's too early to judge element we've discussed in previous years too, new companion dynamics, new production logistics, certain thoughts about accents, the stakes and story of this new Flux threat. But first, I just wanted to ask, in general, what, if anything, you two liked about this episode?
Ooh, what I liked about it. I actually have something I kinda liked about it. I liked that the heart of the TARDIS, the time vortex, still had the same peculiar beaming effect and sound effect that it did back in Parting of the Ways. That's about it.
What about you, Gig?
For my part, I think I liked, I guess, the having a character who seems villainous turned out to be really nice, and the whole idea around the Lopari and Karvanista being these reluctant saviours. I think that's kind of it's a traditional Doctor Who idea, I think. There's that hitchhiker's flair to it of lifting humans off Earth that's about to be destroyed, and I suppose there's sort of a nugget of actual Who-ness in there amongst the maelstrom.
Yeah, that's actually a good point.
Yeah. Okay, well, I liked more things. I liked just having 13 and Yaz together for a while, because I was never a fan of how the 4-person TARDIS team was done in the last 2 series.
Yeah.
And doing a 2 practiced adventurous thing with Yaz and 13, that worked for me much more. I was disillusioned when we got the news that John Bishop would be joining Series 13, because it's like the 2 previous series with Graham. Getting another middle-aged British comedian joining the cast, it seemed like a very...
It's suspiciously like the last 2 seasons with Graham.
Yeah, exactly. It seemed repetitive, a dynamic to me, and I wasn't a fan of Graham in the first place. But to my surprise, I pretty much liked Dan. I liked how he was introduced. I thought him just loving Liverpool so much, he was an impromptu tour guide. I thought that was endearing.
Quick question, because this is a bit of underlying lore, I guess you'd call it, that I don't know, and I feel like it would really color my interpretation. John Bishop. Have he and Chris Chibnall worked together before a lot?
No, but Chibnall's also from Liverpool.
Okay, then never mind.
So, the whole Liverpool... Well, Chibnall's from Formby, which is like a posh area near Liverpool, I believe. So there's that connection. And so his first scene is him just effusing about Liverpool. And I liked that because I think back to Graham's first episode, and it had things like him barking at Ryan and shaming Ryan's dyspraxia. But this guy's first episode has him working at a food bank and just loving the city he's in and everything. So I felt I got on with a much better foot with this guy. I wish we'd had more of a traditional companion introduction episode in some ways, because I feel he was kind of sidelined by all the madness going on. The madness being the kind of Spyfall-esque, all over the place structure, which that's another thing I liked. I thought it lent the episode an energy I think most Chibnall stories lack. And the thing I like most of all is I'm really interested by the production and logistics of this series. The way it's a reaction to COVID and formed out of COVID constraints, that interests me way more than the regular Doctor Who Chibnall was doing before. And I liked Karvanista as well, like Gig. I thought that was a fun concept. So what were things we disliked?
Oh, gosh. I'd like to go back to that list you were describing at the start of the plot and the structure and the accents, and I did not care greatly for this episode. I found it quite bad, actually.
I think to try and highlight a particular thing out of that whole list, I think what comes across to me is that Chibnall has refined doing very little, because he's doing in a sense, obviously there's one sense in which he's doing a great deal, but I think ultimately the story content that this whole system of Flux teasers is pointing to is kind of scant. It's kind of shallow, ultimately. Like, it's just constant teasers, but the thing being teased doesn't interest me a great deal. I mean, it's a big CGI blob, that's flying around.
Yeah.
If we're going to talk about the structure, well, I'll say two things. I want to say what Chibnall said about it. So in Doctor Who magazine, Chibnall said, "We're starting at the level you'd normally see in a finale, with cataclysmic events. It's a very different type of opening episode. In fact, it's hard to think of one that's similar in the show's history. Episode 1 is the opening to a big mystery. It's fast-paced, it's exciting, and it's full of questions. There are multiple new characters, multiple mysteries, and more than one antagonist. It sets up the mysteries that we're going to spend the next few weeks exploring. This is the biggest story we've ever told. I reached a point when I thought to myself, well then, this is exciting. The shape of the stories became slightly different as a result of the restrictions. It was an interesting to do and a lot of fabulous things came out of it." So that's his kind of preface to the episode. Any thoughts on that?
There's no connective tissue between the subplots. It's not a exciting teaser. It's like if the previously on segment at the start of the episode was the whole episode. I'm sure we've complained about that sort of thing before, but it feels really jarring. There's no connection between any of the parts.
I think, in a way, the COVID restrictions and that idea of needing to keep people away from each other to avoid this this pathogen flying around has kind of almost translated into a disjointedness of the story itself. And I feel we might see more of that play out in the ensuing episodes, but so much of this is like these story threads that are just so distanced from each other, not just in terms of the actors, but also thematically and in content. And I get the sense that editing is going to play a huge role here, because a lot of the segments in this episode, you could easily have just put in, episode 2 or 3 or whatever, because they're just like, they've just chopped off a bit at the start of each of these subplots and put it in the first episode, so we know it's there.
On that note of the episode feeling constructed in the edit that way, that's why my the big issues I have aren't so much the script. I feel like the script is actually being let down in a way, because when we come to the music and the visuals, well, on the note of the music, I wasn't a fan. That scene where the trick-or-treaters come to Dan's house, the dialogue is funny. The acting is funny. It's a middle-aged guy that feels entitled to treats knocking on doors. Dan is outraged by this. It's a little funny scene. But the soundscape for it is like this spy-esque booping that just has no connection to what's on screen. It's not only not reinforcing it, it's going against it. It's providing a tone like contrary to the scene, and there's no like funny irony in that. It just clashes to me. I don't need Murray Gold type silly music. I don't need any score at all. But I don't want the composer to be like fighting the script or fighting the episode. And I felt that a few times here. And I kind of felt, I didn't feel the visuals were fighting the episode, but I didn't feel them rising to it. Because like we're saying, this episode moves between a lot of separate settings of dubious connection to each other, perhaps. And I feel like the composer and the director could have maybe done more to cohere these sequences together. Like, what if there was a music cue in the separate sequences that suggested a connection between them? Or what if there was like some recognizable shot that, like if there was a dolly zoom or a Dutch angle or whatever, whenever a Flux-related thing came up in each of these separate sequences. Anything like that might have helped this feel like this is one episode and these things kind of connect together. But I wasn't really getting that, and so it felt very much like you guys are saying, like different episodes are being inserted into each other, because I wasn't feeling anyone rising to give more unity to it. And I feel like having all these disparate cutaway sequences is offering the music and the visuals more room to experiment and play around than a usual Chibnall episode. So I wish there'd been more rising to the weirdness of this episode rather than it feeling very constructed in the edit, like you guys are saying.
I think that's the COVID restrictions, isn't it? Like, I feel like when you know that what you're producing is ultimately going to have to be assembled in the edit somehow, it limits to the extent to which you can really do specialised, specific, episode-specific stuff. Like, when you've basically got these two directors doing half of the series each, and it's like, I feel like there was probably some understandable limits on what they could do.
There's no connection between, for starters, there's no connection whatsoever between where exactly, so is the Flux hitting both Earth and Vinder at the same time? Vinder seems to be in the future, or is he from another planet? What does he have to do with the rest of the story? What do the guys building the tunnels have to do with the rest of the story? Like, the story is the Dog Man.
Yeah.
And I can see why they would want to pepper in stuff from future episodes, and I actually liked the Claire segment, at least the first chunk of it. But I really don't feel like they needed a lot of the material that was in this, which is a shame because, I mean, they really don't have a lot to work with, it seems.
Ultimately, I think it suggests insecurity, I think, about the material they have, that they feel they need to front load all of this stuff, and that whole cliffhanger montage where they're just showing, look, all these things happening at once, oh my god, it's so epic, it's such a cataclysm, oh my god, it's the end of the world, and there's a weeping angel, and there's a Sontaran, and there's some dudes making tunnels, and look, there's stuff happening. It just betrays a lack of confidence in the actual central story happening here. I feel they need to just try and get people excited for future weeks. I mean, it's that, only 2 episodes left to the finale from Series 12 all over again, except on another level.
So it started with 13 and Yaz trapped on an alien planet by Karvanista. The time period isn't relevant. They're off on a space-time adventure. Then we go to Liverpool 1820 with what I'm assuming is the construction of the Williamson tunnels, the famous Liverpool tunnels that people aren't sure why they were made. And then we go to Liverpool 2021, Dan scene, setting up Dan. Then we go to 13 and Yaz trying to go to Earth. Then 13 gets a mental transmission like she has before in her seasons from Swarm. And so then we move to an unknown prison in space where 2 division agents investigate Swarm. He regenerates. Then 13 and Yaz go to Halloween and we get, I think, the worst line of the episode where Yaz goes trick or treat and 13 looks horrified.
The ominous music cue at that point. Trick or treat! Yeah.
Then we go to Dan working at a food bank. He goes home. Karvanista kidnaps him. At this point, I feel like the Liverpool 1820 thing was kind of weird. It felt like it might have made more sense at a cold open, but I still feel like we're like A plot, B plot here. Dan and 13 and Yaz. It's not out of control yet. And then 13 and Yaz investigate Dan's house. So it's chugging along. Yeah.
Now that you think about it, I feel like by having the Liverpool 1820 followed immediately by Liverpool 2020, it feels like it should then, after that scene, in some way reflect back onto the 1820 material. And yet it doesn't appear again for the entire episode. I don't mean to spoil your description here, but...
It would have been so easy because it's an interesting part of Liverpool, and he's in a scene where he's talking up Liverpool. I'm sure they could have somehow done a line where he's like, and it's home of the famous Williamson tunnels, who still mystify people to this day. Like, it wouldn't have been hard.
Yeah, I don't even know what that is, and that sounds interesting and would have made an excellent thing to have, a tour guide who loves his city to include.
Yeah. So at this point, apart from a bit of the weirdness of the disconnected tunnels bit, I feel like the episode is not weird structurally yet. But then we cut to the Arctic Circle in the present day, and we meet a couple.
Oh my god, I forgot this part.
And that's like the first, I feel like, genuine non sequitur. Then we go to Trapped Dan in Space. That's all right. A plot, B plot. Then a random woman approaches 13 and Yaz in the street, and then we get this Blink Redux scene of her and a weeping angel. And then we get another non sequitur. So this is kind of, we've gone Arctic Circle, random woman and angel, new person, Vinder at Outpost Rose, who's talking about how he loves the galaxy, it's very beautiful. And then the Flux eats a planet. So I guess this is the actual threat of the episode is set up in this third or fourth non sequitur. Then we go back to the Arctic Circle.
I don't even know how far into the episode we are at this point. I have no conception.
Swarm goes and he kills the dude in the Arctic Circle, and the woman becomes Azure, Swarm's sister. I know this from the subtitles. That's where I learned her name. And then 13 and Yaz are on Karvanista's ship. This is normal stuff again. They meet Dan. We learn Karvanista is a division agent. Then back to Vinder. He escapes from the Flux. 13, Dan, Yaz try to escape Karvanista. For some reason, he shoots at the human he's meant to protect. I didn't understand that bit. And then something else I didn't understand is we cut to 30 trillion light years away, and the Sontarans are just happy and excited about the Flux.
Very excited. That was a wonderful scene.
Then we're at the edge of the solar system. The TARDIS team survey space. The Flux is coming. Then we see a random green species die as the Flux is approaching. Then we go into 13's eyeball.
Yeah, was that because Swarm was showing her the random species was dying?
See, I don't think it was. See, I think that... Well, maybe, I don't know. But I kind of got the sense it was more like... You know how Eccleston said he can feel the turn of the universe and all that stuff? I feel like it was meant to be a bit like that. Like 13 can feel the universe breaking down. That's how bad the Flux is. Like her Time Lord sense is ringing.
I guess that's fair.
And then we get a look into my eye moment. Swarm and 13 are in... It's a mental projection, is it? That's what I was getting from it.
Yeah, like The Last Jedi when Rey is talking to Kylo Ren.
And he says, I'm your antagonist and all that. Then the Flux chases the TARDIS, so they go to Earth. And then another non sequitur. Dan's friend Diane suddenly is narrating to herself because she can't help that she's walking into a spooky house, and then Azure is in the spooky house. Then back to space. 13 has a plan to save Earth. She tells Karvanista it works, but the TARDIS isn't safe. The Flux gets in. We get this montage of the TARDIS trio in trouble, Vinder in trouble. I feel like those kind of work because presumably it's at the same time. Claire transported back in time. I guess, well, that isn't the same time, but it's kind of connected because she disappeared in the present day. Then we go back to 1820 with the guy frowning.
Presumably she's being sent back to 1820.
Let's not assume connections exist here. Let's not jump ahead of ourselves.
And then we get Diane looking scared, Karvanista looking scared for the Doctor, the Angel just chilling out on Claire's doorstep, the Sontaran super excited, Swarm and Azure looking creepy, and then the Doctor saying the end of the universe. I always wondered what it would feel like. So that's quite a frenetic collection of stuff that isn't always immediately obvious how it's linked or why we're seeing it now.
It feels like they genuinely don't have enough finished material and they have to put it together from whatever they have in the editing room.
There has been talk about it being a finale at the start of the season, and it kind of reminds you why RTD put his version at the end of his season, because you have all the characters and stuff like set up properly first before you try to bring them all together in a gigantic cliffhanger. But on the topic of finales being at the start of the series, it also reminds me of the time Moffat did that, which was The Impossible Astronaut, which had and The Day of the Moon, which had all the crazy stuff happening, and that was at the start of the series too. Loads of arc teasers, loads of mystery, but nonetheless it was all woven into the actual main plot. So it's like, it's really not like anything that we've had before in a sense, but it's trying to kind of piggyback off of stuff that was done coherently before.
I feel like we have had stuff like this before, but not in the new series. And it was never particularly popular when they did it back in the old days either. When you would have the first part of a 4 or 6-parter where there's no respect between A and B plots.
Yeah.
Details just drift in and out of the narrative.
I think the issue with the non sequitur pieces is there's kind of an expectation of a self-evident interest in these, but there isn't at least for me, because I don't know these people. And I think you can get away with a bit of that. I think like something like a cold open, people know this isn't the proper block of the episode, and so there's a little more open to, well, this can be somewhere else and I'll roll with it.
Yeah.
And you can maybe get away with one or two of those in a regular episode, like a scene that we don't understand yet, but we know we sometimes will. But there's a point, if you're doing like 5 of them, it's just, it approaches feeling like noise and not like a story.
And funnily enough, you mentioned cold opens. The actual cold open of this episode, you could remove it completely without affecting the story. So none of the actual mystery bits were used for... the actual cold open that I'm talking about is when the Doctor and Yaz are kind of doing that whole death-defying stunt with and loads of expositional dialogue about how Karvanista is trying to kill them and stuff. But the thing is, it doesn't really affect the story. You could remove it completely, that whole bit.
It would in fact be, I think, better, because you wouldn't... That way you could start by introducing the question of who is Dan and why are we looking for him, rather than having that suddenly drift up out of nowhere halfway through the episode.
In one level, it was trying to introduce Dan, a new companion. That makes sense for a premiere. And then there was also a lot of stuff to do with introducing Swarm as an antagonist. I feel like those together are the kind of things you buy in a premiere. But the Flux being separate from Swarm, I think, was an issue, because the Flux is like the immediate threat we're trying to understand that's attacking Vinja and attacking everyone else. Then Swarm is just like kind of being reborn and everything. It's like later in the series we might learn these events are connected, but I don't think the episode suggests enough connection to kind of make those elements cohere. So it feels like the episode has been pulled in so many directions that it's difficult to remain endeared to all of it in that way.
It also doesn't feel like a driving question to have them connected.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's not like some of the stuff that happens in Miracle Day is all sort of, spooky in terms of
the 3 families.
How timing lines up in like the first couple episodes. That seems weird and suspicious, and that becomes a driving question of that mystery. Yeah. There's no sense of mystery here.
You said earlier on it felt like a previously on segment, and I'd agree. I'd say it feels like a trailer as well, in that I don't actually dislike this. I found it quite exciting to be watching something and to not know what's coming next, and then it's not connected, and then you jump somewhere else. Like, just on a basic level, I think this is more entertaining than like the Sarango Conundrum or another, Chibnall episode that's all centered in the one place. There's a not knowing what to expect out of this, and
it's more Kino than the Ghost Monument, you mean?
Yeah.
You said it was like being on drugs back when we watched Spyfall 2, didn't you?
Yeah, it does feel like that, and for me, it's just like on a basic level, I'm enjoying the experience of watching it more because it's more interesting to me. I don't know what's happening. There's more things happening. I'm seeing more stuff. This is all just fundamentally more exciting to me than other types of Chibnall episodes.
That's fair. You know what? That's actually an interesting point. It does feel like it could be related to perhaps him getting a lot of praise about how even people who don't much care for Chibnall episodes tended to prefer Spyfall last season. Like, I know we are not the only place to have that sort of opinion be expressed.
Spyfall was doing mad stuff, like introducing the Master in a way that wasn't set up, like the champion runner thing, which had no foreshadowing. It was like back when Russell T Davies elated of how Series 3 worked, talking about how it's very exciting to not do foreshadowing and just have things randomly happen, because it's like this huge just rush at the audience of and then it's like just so much going on that it's exciting in its own right. I feel like that's a thing a lot of people can disagree with, how RTD described that, but I feel like that's the same sort of thing happening here. It's just that so much is happening of dubious, links to each other, that it's more entertaining than not. It doesn't mean it's going to work. Like, Spyfall Part 2 did not work for me for a lot of reasons.
Yeah, same.
But there's more to talk about, if nothing else.
See, I think the trouble that really with this episode and all the mystery setting up it does is that where RTD, for example, would rush you with lots of stuff and not foreshadow it or whatever. Here, the stuff that we get and the mysteries that are set up, it basically, I found it actually did more deflating of intrigue than actually building intrigue, because with Swarm in particular, I think this is the key here, because we're given this question of what is Swarm's link to the Doctor, what's the significance of Swarm, what's Swarm to do with the Flux and stuff, but then we just find out that, okay, apparently Swarm was someone the Doctor fought when she was in the Division and her memory was wiped, and Swarm is just some bad guy who really hates the Doctor and just has kind of sexual tension with her like the Master, and is just and wants to end the universe or whatever. And those answers are boring. Those answers are fucking dull. Like, what the hell? There's no mystery here anymore. Like, okay, the Doctor's secret mind wipe past is just that she fought aliens. Oh, great, just like she does now. Great.
Gig, excuse me. They clearly introduced so much new mystery and variety and the possibility of, the infinite variety of stories that they can tell now. So we get to meet the ancient, terrible evil which has been buried in some forgotten prison somewhere. This is a Hinchcliffe villain. This is fucking,
so fresh, so novel.
Yeah, like, this is what... You know what this kind of reminds me of, actually? Do you remember when the series was first coming back, and the fact that one of the central mysteries of the first season was the Bad Wolf thing, and Rose Tyler has these magic powers, and she's the Bad Wolf. Do you remember people suspecting that was related to...
Fenric?
What's his name? Fenric, thank you.
Yeah, I remember.
This feels like Chibnall liked that idea, or like he had some headcanon about Fenric, because this feels like a redux of Fenric in terms of how he... Not in terms of quality, let me be clear.
Yeah.
But in terms of how he's introduced as having always been, an ancient mystery that the Doctor has been working against all this time.
What you're both describing, and I agree with it, is I think the great irony of post Series 11 Chibnall is that how Series 12's events and onward have been described as it's opening the show up to new possibilities. He's done things which enable us to go to new places we haven't been before, do stuff with the characters we can't do before, and then it immediately folds into doing a Dalek special similar to ones we've had before, and a setup with a villain very similar to ones we've had before, like you're saying.
Yeah.
It's this... I would use Gig's word of deflating here, because it's like... I don't quite buy that the stuff that happened in Series 12 does open us up to anything new, and then that's followed up by, indeed, nothing new happening. So it's a deflating kind of feeling for the show to go in that direction.
Yeah.
And also just the Flux itself just being this big nebulous entity that's evaporating the universe. Like, oh my god. I mean, obviously, not only is that incredibly played out in sci-fi and stuff, but even just within Doctor Who, all the stars are going out, the darkness is coming, the universe is ending. It's like, it's just so, like, flat. Like, where's the story? It really is just vague, nebulous doom floating around, like a James Goss audio. It's just really bland.
I was trying to work out what the threat of the Flux actually is. And from the Next Time On trailer, it seems like it's going to, jumble up timelines or something?
Yeah.
So
the impression I get is that because the Doctor fired the vortex energy into the Flux, that might lead to it being a time flux thing or whatever.
So the big change in premise that accompanies Doctor Who Flux's change in presentation is that the Doctor is going to be randomly traveling around to time periods and fighting monsters.
Yes, indeed.
This has like a Divergent Universe feel to it, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is why I feel like novelty is an overrated kind of thing to talk about here. Like, I don't need the show to be doing anything new. I need the show to be doing things well. I don't need to have a setup for we're going to tell stories we've never told before, regardless of whether they do or don't after. I would just like the stories to be told well in the first place. There's nothing wrong with doing a celebrity historical if it's done really well. And I'd be more excited just about someone writing a really good celebrity historical and then that being made very well than getting all this bluster about things are going to be different, especially because then the things very, very, very rarely are.
Yeah.
I think ultimately the chaos that the Flux represents is more of a production thing, because Chibnall's embracing a chaotic form of storytelling, and the story just kind of jumping around chaotically with lots of events happening for seemingly no reason. And I think that's just what Flux really is on the whole. So it's something that's pervading the whole this whole storyline rather than just the Doctor even.
This is less the actual physical flux and more the nature of the episode's non sequiturs. How I think this is working is, you know how a lot of episodes are double banked, and so, you know, one set of the actors, usually either the Doctor or the companion, doesn't do much of the episode at all because they're doing most of another episode that alternatively the other set isn't. Like how in The Lodger, Amy's only in the TARDIS set, so she's in the episode. It's not a companion-like episode in a very obvious way, but we know Karen didn't film that much for the episode. She was busy doing whatever episode in Series 5 Matt Smith actually didn't do much for. That happened heaps early on in New Who, and it used to be very obvious. Like, the Doctor's barely in Love and Monsters, and so we know, oh, he's off doing something. But that's how double banking used to be very obvious. And I feel like as we've gone on, Chibnall's gotten much more elusive, and I guess clever about it. Like, Graham especially, because Bradley Walsh has a busier schedule than Tosin Cole and Manta Gill, you know. So he's written in episodes in ways that Chibnall's are clever with this. He's doing it not necessarily in entertaining ways, but in ways it's not obvious to us that Walsh isn't there so much. You think of I think in The Haunting of
We've
Villa
watched the whole
Diodati,
series and we've paid close attention to Graham. The normies don't notice.
True.
yeah, like when he has a little off side quest in Villa Diodati, I think that comes across just as a normal B plot or C plot for an episode. But when you notice how much it's done across a series, if you look carefully, you can realise,
and it's always done with him.
It's always done with Walsh. Therefore, they're actually banking Walsh differently to the other actors. They're using him more despite having less... He has less time, but they're using him to look as if he has as much time as everyone else. So I think Chibnall does this in subtler ways than the previous showrunners did. I think what Flux is trying to do this not just with one actor, but trying to do this for the production as a whole. We're getting
the entire
we get like the Sontaran aspect of this episode. There's no way that was filmed for the Halloween apocalypse. I'm sure this was filmed with whatever episode features the Sontarans more, features that ships more.
Of course.
They've filmed a sliver to use in a different episode. Or the Angel part was probably filmed with the more Angel-centric episode. The Vinder stuff was probably filmed in an episode that used Vinder more. So I feel like we're getting all these slivers that have been produced to slide into different episodes because this is how Chibnall wants this series to work. It's going to be...
Actually, I suppose that does mean that it is like a couple finales. Namely, the one coming to mind is The Big Bang has tons of little slivers of it that are clearly filmed, that are filmed from other episodes.
Yeah, at the opening where we see characters like Vincent van Gogh and all that kind of thing. Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, that's in Pandora. And then in Big Bang, you also have the Flesh and Stone flashbacks and the Lodger flashback too. So it's both sides.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like how Flux is doing it, I don't want to say lipstick on a pig because I feel like that's a very negative expression for it. But I feel like how Chibnall has sold this from July as it's super serialized. This is, a new thing for New Who. This is an ultra serialized story. The episodes even come up as Chapter 1, Chapter 2 on the title cards. I feel like that, and then this production thing of inserting bits kind of as non-sequiturs in other episodes, I feel like it's maybe papering up the limitations of the COVID filming. If we took all the non-sequiturs out of this episode, would it look cheaper than Series 11 and Series 12 did? Which I know was exactly what Stevens and Chibnall wanted to avoid. They didn't want it to look cheaper. They didn't want it to look lesser than their other series. And so has this been the workaround, that we're putting slivers of other episodes in other episodes to make it look like lots of things are happening and lots of money has been spent here? Because look at all these different settings in episode 1.
I would be so much finer with this if there was any sense of these things being connected,
Yeah.
Like, what if this is what I would do if I was doing this sort of story, is I would have all of these parallel plot lines that specifically center around, let's go with Liverpool.
Yeah.
And no Crimea, no Flux, or enough sci-fi stuff in order to justify the peculiarities of the TARDIS is trapped in Liverpool, and we have to get bounced back and forth, and we can share sets, we can share actors, we can, you could produce it as basically a mini series, but with all sorts of vignettes within it.
Yeah.
I think what you lose out there is that, obviously, because you're focusing on making a story that's coherent here, but
Yes.
if you go from Doctor Who Flux, it's gigantic cataclysms to end the whole universe, and then scale down to Doctor Who Liverpool, you're not getting that sense of the epic and the epic. Please watch this that Chibnall's trying to project in his lame duck period before RTD takes over.
Yeah.
So in November 2020, we learnt we weren't having a 10-episode series like usual. We were having... Well, Chibnall said they'd film 8 episodes, and I know some people misinterpreted this as meaning Series 13 itself would be 8 episodes, whereas a lot of us thought it meant a 7-episode Series 13 and a festive special filmed alongside it. But it actually turned out to be a 6-episode series and 2 specials filmed alongside it, and of course that was later bumped up to 3 specials for 2022. Chibnall and Matt Stevens have spoken a lot about how they had to rethink how to make the show, really factor COVID working protocols into the construction of it, and that they wanted it to feel like its own unique thing, not a regular series suffering under, they made this during the pandemic, a shame, we'll cut it some slack. They wanted to give people big production values in a COVID responsive format that would play to those constraints. Because originally, pre-November 2020, we'd learnt Ed Heim, writer of Orphan 55 and It Takes You Away, was going to write a Series 13 episode, that Maxine Alderton would be a core writer for it, and that a new writer through a bursary scheme through the Screen Skills High-End TV Skills Fund would also be a writer joining the Doctor Who team for Season 13. But Series 13, as we're getting it, is 6 episodes by Chibnall, one of those a co-write with Alderton. Maybe some of those 2022 specials will have Ed Heim or that other new writer as co-writers or something. But my impression is we were originally going to get a Series 13 more in the vein of the last 2 series, but that it was rethought from the ground up to accommodate for COVID logistics. Because Matt Stevens has said, Series 13 evolved quite late in the day. We had a plan for what we wanted to do, and then the pandemic hit. And what we realised was that there were certain things we wouldn't be able to do in the normal way as we had for Series 11 and 12. So, rather than be compromised, as what you want for Doctor Who is for every series to be bigger and better than the last, you don't want to rest on your laurels, Chris came up with the brilliant idea of going, why don't we just do something different for our era? Wouldn't it be great if we told one big story? We knew we wouldn't be able to do the same number of episodes in the time that we had, so Chibnall came up with the fantastic idea of this overarching narrative. Each episode has the same bang for its buck. Each episode has the story of the week. We've still gone for that filmic quality for each episode, but much more than the previous 2 seasons, we've tied it together with a massive overarching story for the Doctor and huge jeopardy for the Doctor. And Stevens also said, we've really tried to go as big as could with the visuals as well. In terms of CGI and in terms of the design of the series, we've really tried to pull out all the stops. So when you watch the show, whether it's in 5 years' times or whenever, no one will be able to say, you made that during the pandemic. We didn't want that to impact the experience for the audience. And that's the end of the Matt Stevens quotes. And Chibnall also said to Doctor Who magazine, the impetus for Series 13 came from the logistics. I realised that there was a way to keep the ambition high, to move the show forward and to play around with things, and that's why we've gone with this format. Among other things, it's enabled us to have more recurring characters, including villains and monsters. We've used our resources as cleverly as possible with sets and locations too. And Chibnall has also said, my vision for the series was to create a massive story, bigger than we've ever told with Jodie's Doctor, and to start with an episode that feels like a finale and carry on from there and play out the rest of the story. And from a production perspective, this, I think it's smart, it's clever, it interests me. The taking double banking to this scale of, actually configuring the episodes around, putting other episodes into them to make it look more expensive and to make it not look slighter because of COVID realities. I think that's really interesting and novel for the show to do, but the writing just isn't supporting it feeling merited. Yeah, like Muri's is saying, it doesn't feel as coherent or linked as it could, and therefore it's more like I'm talking about this, I'm very interested by the production of it, but I'm not talking about the story itself so much, because it's almost more interesting to talk about than to watch, basically.
Oh, definitely, yes.
Something like this is a huge writing challenge. Like, you need to be a really, really fucking smart writer to do crazy, intricate stories that jump all over the place. I mean, you need to be Moffat, basically.
Yeah.
So the fact Chibnall was just like, okay, I can do this, this is what we get.
If we're judging the episode like we are, I want to talk about the too early to judge stuff. So in 2018, and recurring through the next few years, we often saw this refrain of, it's too early to judge. This is as far back as The Woman Who Fell to Earth, The Ghost Monument. People would say, it's too early to judge, like some of us were doing quite critically, because Series 11 wasn't over yet. Chibnall's era had just started. The actors had to have time to grow into their parts. The production had to grow into itself, and so on and so on. This continued through Resolution, through Series 12, and there's always justifications. Whether they're merited or not, there's always reasons people can come up with. You can't judge this yet because anyone can finish that sentence. But I feel like what's happening here is the episode is titled Chapter 1, and so I think it's much thornier. Where in Series 11, I felt quite justified in judging it because you've given us 50 minutes of TV. You've released this separately. It's a TV show. You're giving us episodes week to week. Of course, you can judge episode to episode because they're broadcasting episodes. They're here to be watched, to be consumed, to be judged, to be discussed. Of course they can be judged. It's ridiculous to not judge them. You can judge them in context later. When Series 11 is done, we can talk about Series 11 as a union. But I think it's preposterous to suggest you can't judge something as it comes. But what's thornier here is it does say Chapter 1 at the intertitle. And I'm sure it'll say Chapter 2, Chapter 3, Chapter 4, Chapter 5, Chapter 6. So this series, and how Chibnall has sold it as ultra-serialized, it is actually more directly saying, don't judge us quite yet, I think. I think it's not just fans saying this. Like, Chibnall wasn't saying, don't judge Woman Who Fell to Earth. This was an entirely a fan-led thing. But here, I feel like Flux is kind of asking us, hold off on judgment a little bit. We're structured more like one of those big streaming blob shows where it presumably will work better as a unit. This is how it's being sold, at least. I have my suspicions over how it'll actually be. I don't think it's going to be as serialized as Chibnall is saying. I think these episodes are going to be much more standalone.
That's my feeling too. Well, that's the best case scenario is really my concern.
All the set photos have showed all these varied settings, for the different blocks. Like, there's so much different stuff they've filmed that I find it hard to believe every episode is going to be like this first one and be so linked in like that. But anyway, is it too early to judge this time? Do you think this refrain has more merit now than it did for Series 11 and Series 12?
No.
No. A lot of people are saying this. I think more so than Series 12.
At this point, it's fair to judge the Chibnall era as a whole. So really, Doctor Who Flux is just a clerical error, as Peter Capaldi once said.
If this was in 2018, you think it would be harder to argue? You think it would be more merited to wait to judge? But because it's after so much Chibnall, you think we already have this grounding to judge? Is that what you... Yeah, okay.
Yes. I feel like there is a material difference, if not a philosophical one.
Yeah. I feel like there's also this disconnect. I feel like when people are judging the episode or critiquing the episode, I think a lot of people are kind of reading that as people critiquing it being set up, and then that seems ridiculous to them because they're like, what, do you not like Chapter 1 of a book? Did you not like, the first movie in a trilogy because it was set up? I feel like a lot of people are reading it as that.
Yeah, I've seen.
But I'm sure some people are maybe critiquing in that way, but I feel like that's not what.
I definitely am not.
Like we're saying, the various non sequiturs don't cohere together, and they could be written or filmed or scored to cohere together.
I'd like to lay out my... You know what? I don't even have to lay out my credentials for this. We've all got them. We've all... Probably every single one of us watched at least one show as ridiculous as, Lost. and did so closely that we could follow the plot week to week.
Yeah.
And yeah, I feel like, each of us has at least one of those. So, yes, we are fine with sit-up episodes. I've watched shit that would blow your mind. This is just very poor. This is just terrible quality.
I think fundamentally, like, a first episode being set up is fine, but, like, in the sense that it's not strictly just mechanically let's set up things. You are also telling that's the start of your story. It's the start of your goddamn story. You are trying to bring us into the story you're telling. You're not just setting up things, you're giving us a reason to care that you're setting them up, a reason to want to see what you're setting up and find out later. And if you don't do that, then you fucked up, isn't it? So the ridiculous comparisons we're getting on Twitter, like, oh, I bet you hated the first episode of Unearthly Child. Well, no, because that episode is incredibly intriguing mystery.
It's very good.
That's so ridiculous because people watch an Unearthly Child separate to the 3 other episodes. It's part of the same series.
Yeah, that episode of all.
Yeah.
The way I see it, what it feels to me is less like the first episode of a good classic series episode or story, but more like how sometimes you would get third of 6 or second of 4, where there's no the entire episode is essentially filler. It's just plots rammed together, no connection. The only reason that we're watching these 2 things happen at this point is because 3 episodes ago they had something to do with one another.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that they use the terminology of chapters for the show, because if you read a book, a chapter in a book is so delineated because that particular chapter is focusing usually on a particular main thread, or it's got a particular unit to give to you in this chapter, this stretch of time. Whereas with episodes like you're describing in Classic Who or like this, it really is just stuff run together to fill out 50 minutes.
The thing with the chapter thing is I think people defending it on the basis of that and comparing it to novels, I think they're kind of fighting against the format. And I think they're actually going against what Chibnall and Stevens are doing here with how they've described, this series is a reaction to COVID. We've really honed in on the constraints and tried to do something that transcends them. This is how they're selling it. And so what they're doing is they're talking about they've really focused in on the format and they've built the series around the format. And the format is the thing they're proud of here. The format is what the series is based around.
God, that's a good point.
But then some of these fans are then saying, no, ignore the format. Ignore that it's 6 episodes of television coming out a week after each other. Wait till it's done. Watch it in one block. It's going to make sense when it's done. But it's television. It's coming out week to week. This is the format that Chibnall and Stevens are making. This is what we're getting. It's television. It's, an hour a week. So I feel I
truly feel like it's not going to work much better once it's all out.
Yeah. I feel like defending the series on the basis of something that it's not, defending it when it's, a Blu-ray that you can watch all at once, when you can stream it all on iPlayer. I don't feel like that, I don't feel like it's defending Chibnall and Stevens at all. I feel like it's kind of ignoring what they're actually doing, which is being proud of what they've made, which is 6 weeks of serialized television to go from week to week. And I feel like even the non sequiturs are kind of here to get you talking. They, want you speculating about how does this connect. Like, I feel very much this is built as a week to week series. So I don't think defending it for being something it's not is doing anyone any favors.
Yeah, it's tantamount to telling people don't bother watching it for 6 weeks. Just stop watching it, go away, watch the whole thing once it's over, stop paying attention, go away. Yeah, they want all the critical people to just go away and stop watching it. So the positivity fountains can just speculate about what the flux is and stuff by themselves.
What the flux is going on? Gig has transferred to deadly silence in response to that joke.
I thought it was good. It's a standard pun for the series. I want to talk about accents because if we're speaking of strange online reactions, I've seen some. There's 2 characters to talk about here: Dan and Karvanista. I'll talk about Karvanista first. So I've seen a lot of people saying, and I don't like this criticism at all. I'm going to react against this very much. A lot of people are saying like it's silly for the dog to talk like this. They're saying a space dog wouldn't have an accent. It's pulling me out of the show for the space dog to have this accent. I hate this because it's like, what is it saying? Like, why would what accent do they...
It's saying that no planets have norths.
Yeah, I just find that so ridiculous. Like, it's a human that's going to be acting the space dog no matter what. Like, is somehow is like an RP accent more universal? Or like, I feel like it's...
Well, yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
I feel like it's subtly messed up, this idea that the space dog shouldn't sound like that. It should sound like...
If this was happening and the difference was the character had a particular southern accent,
Yeah.
I would feel like this response was, kind of racist if they're saying that, the space dog can't talk like that.
In the UK context, it's probably just more of a class thing. Like, RP is posh, other accents are less posh.
Yeah, I don't fully grasp the social implications of accents just yet. He sounded like a teddy bear to me.
Yeah, I don't understand how these people are watching TV. Like, it's going to be a human with an accent acting the aliens no matter what. You cannot get around that. There's no actual alien to get acting in the show.
Not anymore.
And RTD did this loads. Like, it's like they've forgotten the era completely.
It's going to sound like a human because it is a human. And we can get the actor doing any accent you want, but it's always going to be an accent because everyone comes from somewhere. So I feel like there's a weird implication behind, well, it can't sound like that. But the other accented character I want to... Oh, what were we saying, Mirrors? Do you have something?
No, I'm squealing in anticipation.
Well, Dan's accent is the other one to talk about, because I've seen in the lead up to the series, some people were like joking about or actually wondering, is Dan going to be an issue for some viewers not from the UK? Because the Liverpool accent isn't one that you get in UK movies that are broadcast outside the UK. Miris, did you have trouble understanding him?
Okay, so I tried really hard. But I did have subtitles on, and my mother, who I watched it with because she likes the show, she got 0 of it.
Yeah. And
she was kind of a Beatles fan back in the day, so I guess there's a difference. This is
It's I don't think there's any weird undertones to this the way there is with the Karvanista thing, because I just mean it's an accent that isn't as broad.
Yeah, we have 0 exposure to it. It'd be like if suddenly the companion was a Geordie.
I watch everything with subtitles, so it made no difference to me. However he talked, but I think it's interesting because the show, like, it goes on a HBO Max eventually and everything. Like, the show very much is an international kind of show these days.
There's no problem with it. There's no problem.
Oh, of course there's no problem.
It is a little bit of a hiccup. It's the slightest bit of resistance that you can't have if you're trying to be, like, I don't think it's particularly surprising that even though he cast a northern actor to play the Doctor, he still had Rose playing the broadest possible London accent, so that, the entire country feels, well, not really, but you know what I mean.
I think it's I find it kind of noble of Chibnall, like, to do something that could well turn off some international viewers. I like it because it shows a bit of personal taste, there's something personal coming out here. He likes Liverpool, he's from Formby, he likes John Bishop.
Yeah, that's fair.
I like it. I think it's a little endearing thing that he's going to cast someone that some people not in the UK will have trouble with. But I think that's nice because, yeah, it's not maybe smart in the RTD style of casting. But
especially if you're not going to have this guy. Well, at least he's not going to be doing presumably any serious, like techno-babble.
Yeah. Geek, as the UK resident, do you have a view on all this John Bishop stuff?
Okay, I like that what little serious creative vision Chibnall has is being prioritised over a desperate desire to be liked by everyone. I think that's always generally a good thing. Like, for someone to just... And I'm a bit of an elitist. I like stuff that filters people if it means, being more true to whatever the hell the story is or the art is or whatever. So, I think it's... And plus, it's what subtitles are for. Just put on subtitles.
I do actually totally agree with you that morally it is a good thing to drive more people away from Chibnall.
Also, I just think, just challenge people a bit, get them to try hard, listen to accents they haven't heard before. Like, it's a good thing,
Something I loved it in Series 5 with Ledworth. I liked it with Sheffield and Liverpool now. I just like the de-Londonising of the show. I think it's always fun. I don't dislike London. I like London. I've been to London. It's cool. But the show does so much in London that it's just naturally exciting to go someplace else. And it's representative, which is also cool. So we were talking of Karvanista's accent. So we should talk about Karvanista in general. The dog as man's best friend kind of anthropomorphized thing.
Yeah.
This is getting a lot of praise, I've seen, even from people who weren't particular fans. I liked it. I thought it was a fun concept. What did you guys think?
Gig?
I think to the extent that the idea is good and the execution is Chibnall. I think in the second half of the episode, once we find out that he is in fact a reluctant saviour rather than a murderer, his character kind of starts to go off the rails a bit. Like by the end of the episode, it's like we've forgotten that he was this kind of violent tyrant at all, and he's like begging the doctor, you have to get to safety. And okay, doctor, I'll do whatever you ask. I'll order my fleet to do this thing that you're saying. Yeah, and it's like it's. And meanwhile, in the first half of the episode, you have stuff like him behaving in an extraordinarily violent way towards Dan and nearly killing Dan and threatening to kill everyone and shooting at Dan and stuff. So it's like the stuff that the misdirection that Chibnall's trying to do here with him seeming to be bad and then turning out to be good. It's like the actual through line of a coherent character through that has been forgotten. And it's all just about trying to give the audience a certain impression.
What he does is he just kind of represents the undercooked, incoherent nature of the episode in general. Like that stuff isn't linking together, or it feels like it needs a few more passes. Like I was so confused when he shot at the TARDIS team running away from him. Like, is his whole purpose not to save Dan? Why is he shooting after Dan?
He's a predator. He has the predator drive. They ran away. He had to.
That would be interesting to actually see. Like, does he have the predator drive that makes him want to pick up Dan and ragdoll him around? That would be an interesting dog. There's so much stuff they could do here with like riffing off things that dogs do.
It is such an interesting concept for a character, for a species, for even like a sci-fi sort of science fantasy element where there's like everybody has to, once you get over a certain number of your, whatever, you have to start taking care of other species around you.
Yeah.
It's a brilliant idea.
It's the most imaginative and interesting thing, I think, in the episode. It makes you wonder, would Yaz's dog be different? Does the dog look like the person they're looking after, or act? Is there any connections between dog and person? We need to meet another one to see that. But it's very interesting. I just wish he was written a little more consistently with, is he a villain? Is he a good guy? But I think the twist that he's a good guy was good. It surprised me, but at the same time, it's like the master champion sprinter thing. It's like part of the reason this surprises me is because it almost goes against, what the episode was already doing. Like it's kind of a cheat in that way. But I like the Lopari stuff. I hope that comes in more in the rest of Flux. I hope we meet more of them.
It's now that I think about it, he's not allowed to become the big cuddly savior of humanity until after he takes off the scary helmet and reveals that he's a dog.
Yeah.
Speaking of his dog costume, like, what did you guys think of like the actual design of it? I feel like when they did that thing where Dan was kind of nuzzling him and calling him like a shitty costume, I feel like stuff like that is meta in the way I don't like. Where like, hey, we're calling attention to how crap the costume looks. It was very kind of 80s cheetah people, actor can't emote through it at all kind of design.
The actor, I know he was cocking his head the way a dog does, so there was definitely effort with trying to inhabit being a dog.
I liked actually a lot of the physical performance, even though the face is clearly limited, and it seems to be in fact limited just to animatronic elements and like the mouth a little bit. But it's a very cute, very cartoony design. It feels like they're talking to a mascot from Disney World or something,
Yeah.
It's something that's easy to like, which we're not used to with Chib Who, because you usually just get stuff that's kind of just vaguely off-putting.
Mm-hmm.
Stuff like the costumes or the CGI, like I saw there's even been articles about, fans are outcrying at the dodgy CGI in whatever scene. I feel like it's such
Help me with that. Was anything particularly more bad than usual?
Yeah, I don't really think so. Like, I know they're filming on green screen more than usual because
That's
of
clear,
COVID.
yeah.
I know Rachel Talalay weighed in, didn't she? I think it was the opening scene she criticised, but she said the stuff later was good. So the particle effects, the flux, she praised that. But I think it was just that opening scene with the acid pits and stuff. It made it look a bit too CSO.
I felt that when it gets away with it by being absurdly ambitious for like this production of all productions to let's have a giant CGI environment with like things interacting with them, and there's like what looks like ragdoll physics, or it might just be them actually being jerked around in a big room, either of which seems expensive and interesting.
Yeah.
I think the opening's fine, and I think a lot of the other CGI is, you know,
it's Doctor Who.
It's Chibnall. It's Doctor Who in particular.
Every Doctor Who episode is going to offer something more interesting to criticize than the cheapness of the costumes or the limitations of the CGI. I feel like
this is no giant rat.
Yeah, you can make these criticisms, but there's always going to be more substantial stuff to talk about, I think. Like the angel, I'd like to talk about the angel scene because I think this is so interesting because it's that kind of self-evident thing again, where it's like the scene is meant to work because the angels are scary. But the scene, do you think this scene would work to someone who'd never seen the show before Series 11?
Yes. Well, I mean...
You do?
In that particular case, yes, because what the angels are and how they work is like so almost self-evident in how they're presented. Like, you only need to show her get spooked by it twice before, you know, Joe Random Nobody on the street has worked out how it works.
I saw a lot of people liked the key element, that, you know, it's a very relatable thing of trying to put the key in the door. Maybe you're looking at your phone or something, and so you're just missing the key hole again and again.
It's kind of it's introducing very old slasher movie elements into it's very like third movie in the series kind of development.
I felt... Well, Gig, what did you think of that scene?
I thought purely on execution, I thought it was just kind of the usual sloppiness. Like, there's stuff that we can infer, like you say, visually. Anyone can immediately tell what the angel is and how it works just from that scene. But yet you still have her going, if you blink, it will move. You mustn't blink. And just explaining it for us in words. And then just structure-wise, I thought it was weird that they showed her looking away from it on purpose, seemingly for no reason, multiple times. And then when she actually gets the key in the door, she unlocks the door, she goes in, and then they just have a long close-up on her eye when she's looking at it, and instead of going in and shutting the door, she just blinks and it gets her. Like, it's not very... It doesn't really tell us the story of why the hell she let it get her. Like, or like how it got her. It's very weird.
I thought she was gonna have to turn her arm around and it would have to go in front of her face, you know? Something like that. Something to actually ground it in some sense of personal physicality, which is how the angels work. That's literally the most important thing about them, is that to play the angel game, you have to not blink, which is physically uncomfortable. So they are a physical thing that the audience plays with.
Yeah, it just didn't feel very storyboarded.
Yeah, it has nothing to do with the rest of the episode. Like, I like Claire's first part when she shows up and she's like, "Oh, you haven't met me yet," because it's interesting to see one of those scenes from the other perspective. You know, we see it all the time from the chronologically correct perspective within the story, but to put it, you know, seemingly out of nowhere at the beginning, that's more interesting, like the sort of thing Moffat would do.
Moffat did do it with Canton in Impossible Astronaut. You know, he turns up and says, "You'll meet me" in the past, yeah.
Well, so also with River Song in the grand scheme of things.
Even Smith and Jones has that scene where the future 10th Doctor at the start does something weird to Martha and we don't understand it to the end. I think all these things can work, but it's just the larger thing of the episode, I think, there's a certain amount of investment you get with an episode. It's like...
Magic is what I call it.
It's like how I was saying, if you have a prologue, a cold open, people are more open to, well, this has no connection to anything yet, but I understand it's disconnected from the episode. It's a cold open, therefore I'm more open to it. But this episode isn't just having one case of a character saying, I'm not connected now, but I might be later. It's doing this the entire episode with so many people. And it's having it's not just one scene of an old monster coming back.
It's spending our investment in it.
Yeah, we're also getting the Sontarans to show up and wave around. It's like the episode is just... It's spending too much of this investment, I think.
At the very least, when they introduced the Sontarans, there was the transition into it. Like, the Doctor says, who else knows about this? And then we get the Sontarans finding out about it. With Claire's first appearance, right? The Doctor and Yaz land on Earth, they escape the house or whatever, and then Claire is just there, happening to just wander past. And just runs, like, Doctor, oh my God, it's me! It just felt so... it's just so coincidence-driven and so random, and it's contrived, I think is the word I'm looking for. It's just a script inserting her in at that point just because, rather than because it's actually motivated by anything in particular.
I feel like we can accept no previous stakes with a character a few times in like a film or an episode. Like, Vinda, I've never met you before. You said a kind of nice thing about the galaxy, so I guess I'm going to kind of care if you're about to get killed by the Flux. But we had so many new characters, like the couple in the Arctic Circle.
Oh God, I keep forgetting about them.
And Claire and Diane and all these people. You've never met me before, but care about me right now. That doesn't work for me. There's only so many stakes, I feel like, for me at least, an episode can set up with no prior connection or prior investment. And I was just doing it too much. Like this Weeping Angel scene, I don't really care if you get zapped back. I don't know you yet. And then Vinda, I don't really know you yet. Diane, I don't know you yet. It's like, we need more time.
I love they reintroduced Diane right at the end of the episode after we've all forgotten who she is. Oh, she's back now, she's important.
I'm not against having a new character or two get into a perilous situation and expecting the audience to care. I totally think you can do that. I don't think you can do it this much. I feel like it just gets kind of silly.
I will say, the scene where Diane got menaced by Azure and lured into the haunted house with the glowing light inside, it felt very Twin Peaks The Return, so I kind of loved it. It felt she was in the Black Lodge all of a sudden, it was great.
I was talking about visual links I wish happened between segments earlier. We had a shot of the angel in Claire's eye, and we also had the zoom-ins into 13's eye for the segments with Swarm. I guess that's the closest we got. Like, maybe if we had a shot of the Flux
I hadn't even thought of
in
that.
Vinder's eye, and if, Mr. Williamson had, I don't know, the tunnel in his eye or something, that could have been a cool way to at least say, this is one episode, guys. We haven't just assembled this like David Lynch did with A Return in the edit, out of just this big slop of filming. This is an actual individual thing you are watching one week.
I guess that's why a lot of other shows that do play with this, that have this structure, they tend to have some particular symbol or icon that unifies everything. Like on Heroes or Lost or whatever. Like, everybody's connected.
Even if the viewer isn't the sort of person to like talk about and notice, oh, did you notice they did a Dutch angle in both these things? I feel like on some level your brain can feel some kind of intent when something is connecting in that way. I feel like you register it even if you can't talk about it.
Yeah, when something rhymes visually in any way, like we pick up on it because it's just what our brains do. We look for patterns.
Yeah.
Have we talked about just like what they're trying to do with the Doctor and Yaz? I guess it's just Yaz generally, more really, because this is her third season. We're kind of getting to the point where we need something from Yaz, right? And they're clearly trying to write her a bit differently. She plays more of a doctory role to Dan in that one scene where she introduces herself and the music swells. And then we also have her kind of bickering with 13 and kind of whining at 13 in the same way she was in Series 12 about how you're not telling me anything, Doctor. Why aren't you telling me stuff? So like, what do you guys think of that? Is it working, do you think?
The shot on the bed, so when they land into the TARDIS, I feel like this is a great microcosm of Phasma in general, because
that is, well, I'm willing to defend against certain accusations of queerbaiting regarding Thasmin, because as a person who ships Thasmin, a ton of it is not intentional on the part of Chris Chibnall, or I assume many of the directors who've been involved. It's clearly coming just from the actors having chemistry and an interesting double act that they can play. But the bed with the handcuffs, that is absolutely queerbaiting. There's no
I disagree with people who completely write off Thasmin. People can laugh at me for this, but the fourth episode of Series 11 brings it up. We get it in dialogue, which is so much more than other queerbaiting stuff ever gets. We have a character directly ask, are you two dating? They say no, but it's still brought up. It's not a ridiculous thing to talk about.
It's not just that they say no, it's that they ask, are we sure not?
Yeah. So I feel like it not coming to pass is completely reasonable. You know, an expectation, but I've never felt like it's a silly thing to talk about. The bed shot, I think the issue is them in handcuffs on the bed does invite certain thinking. Paul Cornell, you know, certainly saw it this way, but it's got the double thing of they could have had, you know, the beds in there just figuring they're going to have to fall into the TARDIS because of this, you know, misadventure.
No, it has nothing to do with the explanation as to why there's beds there. We can see why there's probably beds there is because they seem to have set up this trick to land. It's just that the image is put there into the audience's mind. It's put out there for Tumblr to consume. It's absolutely intended just to grab at the attention of people who make GIFs on Twitter.
So yeah, like there's the Thasmid stuff. There's always a lot to talk about, but I like Rose in Series 2, Clara in Series 9 stuff when a companion is kind of near the Doctor's. Well, I don't know if near the Doctor's level exactly here, but when they're a practiced adventurer, I like that dynamic.
Right before they get struck down.
Yeah, we'll see what happens.
It's what always happens.
I don't know how I feel. Like I like Dan. To my surprise, is Thasmin stuff, I don't even just mean necessarily a romance, but just the relationship in general going to be dampened by the new guy being around? I hope not, because this idea of 13 and Yaz have had off-screen adventures a lot, and now they're, you know, more in sync. I like that a lot.
Living together.
I hope they feel like deeper friends.
The trouble with it is that they're also trying to do this thing where Yaz has conflict with the Doctor because the Doctor won't tell her why the hell they're doing all these things. And the trouble with that is that from what we know what the Doctor knows, and we saw the Timeless Children, Yaz didn't see all that stuff, so we know what the Doctor is hiding from Yaz, more or less. And I don't think there really is a compelling reason for the Doctor to be keeping all this a secret. Like, what the hell is so bad about, I had my mind wiped, that she can't even tell Yaz why they're putting themselves in mortal danger? Like, that's not how you treat a friend.
It's just contrived.
There's no connection. There's no connection to the emotional stakes there.
Yeah.
So it just feels like bickering, you know, it just feels like Davison-era companions in bickering with the Doctor for reasons that we just don't, like, feel any connection to. It's not really meaty, awesome conflict like Clara and 12.
It's not even a progression because it's the exact same. She even used the word Mardy, which was used the last time they complained about the Doctor hiding stuff from them. So I don't hate this beat of the companion can tell the Doctor's hiding something and they don't trust it, but I feel like it's really contrived how they've arrived at it, and I don't really understand why the Doctor's doing it. And I don't like that it doesn't seem to be progressing, just repeating instead.
Yeah, it's been repeating since Spyfall Part 2, hasn't it?
Yeah, literally at the start of the last series. Like, we're just back in the big cycle.
So we've been playing this same... When did that episode come out?
January 2020.
So almost 2 years.
Yeah, because Mandip's the longest running companion now, isn't she?
Yes. Yeah, she is.
Constructive comparison with the secrets thing. Like, if you look at Amy in Series 6 or Clara in Series 8, like, those are times when the companion actually has secrets from the Doctor, right? The companion doesn't tell the Doctor everything. And that's, you know, that's normal because relationships are, people have things that they keep from each other. And it's impossible to imagine Yaz having anything she doesn't tell the Doctor. You know, having any sort of withholding anything. You know, it's just, and it's the same with the fam, I think. It's just, it's so unbalanced, that relationship. And it's just so, like, it's just really hard to invest in the Doctor's relationship with any of these companions when she's just not...
It reflects on her so poorly.
Yeah, exactly.
It's something that's been bugging me since practically day one, is there's no way to empathize with a main character who treats their friends the way that she treats the fam. You know?
And the rationale that 13 gives in this episode to the Yaz, like, haven't I taken you to some amazing places? Like, I do all this great stuff for you.
So
why are you complaining? Yeah, exactly. Why do you want to know why we're going the way we're going? Why do you know why I'm putting you in mortal danger? Haven't I taken you to them? Haven't I do all these great things for you? Aren't I so great? It's like, what the hell, you know?
I have no expectation that it's going to get any better because he's basically written every episode. More than half of every episode is going to be Chibnall material. So, this is like as good as it's possibly gonna get. And so let me be clear. I thank Christ that Russell T Davies is coming back, because this is like fandom breakup level shit.
It's funny because I feel like in 2020 and 2021, pre-October, David Tennant was overshadowing Jodie Whittaker in a really serious way. Not just in fans preferring older series, but he was getting so much...
He was getting new material.
A Time Lord Victorious project of transmedia content. These big...
You got Dalek Universe,
these big 10th Doctor audio season. He was just in the fan space so much more than Jodie Whittaker that it felt kind of weird. Even if you prefer him, it felt like this doesn't feel like a healthy state for the show. And then...
It broke the sense of there being like a presence to the show.
Yeah, but it escalated because Russell T Davies was announced to come back as showrunner before Series 13 had aired and before the 3 specials next year. So it's like
she's ending her series, no longer the incumbent Doctor already.
Yeah. Chibnall, it's like the 13th Doctor was getting overshadowed by the 10th, and now Chibnall is getting overshadowed by RTD. This is a really strange thing to me. It's this. I feel sorry for the Chibnall production team, really, and the actors and everything. I feel like it's an unpleasant...
I know, they worked hard on this.
I feel like it's an unpleasant and unhealthy thing for the incumbent Doctor and incumbent showrunner to be kind of overshadowed in at least some spaces of the fandom by what's to come.
It's spreading around. It's like when you tell casual fans, they get quite excited.
Oh, they do. Yeah.
Yeah, it spreads like wildfire. It's a little bit not nearly the same because they're such different shows, but it feels a little bit more like when Miracle Day and Series 6 were lining up together.
Yeah.
And they don't fit together, and they're both like really big events.
Yeah.
So they both occupy a lot of fandom mind space. But this is way worse because it's the future of the show.
I think the combination of an old, beloved showrunner coming back and the current incumbent era having such an ultimately empty, kind of self-cannibalized vision of the show itself, so no real alternative to put forth, is just what leads to like the future just subsuming the present in this way. Because there's really nothing, there's no opposing force. Like Chibnall isn't fighting back here. Like what the hell? The Flux, a big blob. Who gives a fuck about that? Who gives a fuck about the implication it has for the future of the show? It's really nothing. There's nothing here.
I feel like there's a very real, like funereal sense about Flux and the next 3 episodes, because there's just so much of this. I'm thinking about Russell T Davies now.
Especially because they brought up Rose.
Yeah, Outpost Rose.
They bring up Rose in the episode, and then they also have the heart of the TARDIS essentially show up at the end, just to show that it's, a more dangerous enemy than the Dalek Emperor, I guess.
Yeah.
I kind of have one more just little thing I want to draw attention to, is that Joseph Williamson's scene in 1820 at the start, he says, like, do you think rationality can prepare us for what lies ahead? And I feel like that's kind of emblematic. This idea that irrationality is the only solution to this crisis. I think that kind of reflects how essentially the chaos of the story and just the chaos of the production and everything, I like that kind of nod to how fundamentally, like, what the fuck inducing this is. It felt a bit Lovecraftian, honestly. The idea that you'd have to go insane to fight the Flux. Obviously, it won't fulfill that promise at all, but I like the idea of just going into this story with just a mindset of don't try to pass it rationally at all.
It is supposedly the Doctor's great strength. This one most of all. I don't know.
Although she is rather obsessed with the law still, isn't she? Like, the problem with the Flux is that it upset the laws of the universe.
That's true, that's right.
The status quo.
She acts so anarchic in moment to moment, but then she's also like a serious rules person, sorting out fair play across the universe. Come on.
So it is fitting ultimately that her final challenge is just Flux, just the phenomenon of change or instability. Yeah. And of course, we're going back to her time as a space cop, which is like the secret plot. It was mind wiped. So,
okay, that does it for our discussion on the Halloween apocalypse. Next week, we'll be talking episode 2 of Flux, War of the Sontarans. For now, thank you very much for listening in. Please feel free to comment any of your own reactions and thoughts, whether it's to some of the stuff me and Giga and Mirrors have said, or just on your own thoughts on the episode in general. Cheers.
Trick or treat.
Better written. Killer at home. Better written. Very cliche. Better written. Killer at home. Better written. Very cliche. But I still felt that story was fairly boring.
That's all this year is.
You don't even have to watch it in order.
Better written. Very cliche.